Morning, everyone. I think my talk's a little bit different today, in that I'm not so much talking about the investment so much as the wrapper, I guess. And the fact that owing to a couple of, I guess, good Chancellor moves, pensions has become a bit more interesting than it used to be over the years. So I've termed it a tale of two Chancellors. What it is a brief trip through where we've got to with self-invested personal pensions, where we might get to, I guess, from next April with the legislation which I've been surprised by. More and more people have been interested in. The Chancellor, George Osborne, sort of announcing that from next April, people will have the freedom to take out what they want from their pensions. So my talk really is a little bit of a trip through that in 20 minutes, really. So we'll see how far we get. But I'm very much aware of, I always keep in touch with what's going on in the press about pensions. And I realise the Daily Express has now become my bellwether for pensions news. The Daily Express, I don't know if people know, have sort of 5 or 6 subjects that they focus on, sort of almost every other week. You know, there's the royal family, there's let's get out of Europe, there's pensions, and a combination of those seems to be the headline that the Daily Express goes for. And it's interesting, 'cause for me it gives me a bit of perception perhaps of what people think about pensions. So some of these headlines are always good. Millions hit by pension rip-off. That's a typical Daily Express headline. Great thing, picture of the royal family on as well. 2 subjects on the same newspaper, sells more papers. Pensions crisis as payouts slashed. I always think that, again, nice positive story. Keeps people aware of the pensions world. Again, we get pensions, we get the royal family. I mean, the combination of that sort of double whammy approach, I think, keeps the Daily Express ticking along. But then it's very occasionally, we get positive. Pension boost on way for millions. And I think the serious point of this is that pensions is a much maligned, much misunderstood subject sometimes, and that the Daily Express does realise it is quite an important subject, and I think that it does give us at least some sort of indication of the way the markets are going. I just would say, I don't buy the Daily Express every day. I just see the headlines on the way to buy my Daily Mail. I'm glad people laugh at that one. Otherwise, you might think I really was a mail reader. So what we had this year, I mean, the big event obviously was the budget this year, and surprisingly, George Osborne standing up and saying, well, pretty much from next April, you can do what you want with your pension money. And I think you can take it out, you don't need to buy an annuity. I think it has been the case that you don't need to buy an annuity for a long time. But the focus very much has been, on what George Osborne said. And I'm a bit of a pensions geek sometimes. I remember when it was News at 10 was on a few weeks back, and it was the Queen's Speech Bill, and they said, we've got this new pensions legislation, which means you don't have to buy an annuity. I stood up and said, I was shouting at the TV saying, it's been the case for years. You don't have to buy an annuity. At which point my wife told me to be quiet and stop shouting. Then she apologised to the guests. And so from that perspective, I think the pensions world suddenly has got a bit of extra gloss. And people that didn't want to talk to me about pensions, friends of mine, are now saying, Mike, this is interesting. From next April, it looks like we can start taking our pension money as we wish. Now, we've got draft legislation. I'm not going to go through all the detail of that. There's draft legislation. There's a few pits and pitfalls and things. But what we do have from next April is the ability for people over 55 to pretty much take out their pension funds as they wish, subject to tax. Now, I think there's a number of different areas there. I mean, I divide the retirement market into 3 groups. Those with significant pension funds, great tax planning opportunities. Those at the bottom end of the market, perhaps not enough pension to buy an annuity, some real options to actually use your money for what you want to use it for. The bit in the middle is the more difficult one. Those people with middle-range pension funds who perhaps live a lifestyle sustained by a couple of salaries, want to live a lifestyle that is sustainable based on that. I think careful investment management will be the key there, and I think that's where self-invested personal pensions will come into their own as people start using equities, bonds, gilts in different ways to achieve specific investment outcomes based on their risk profile for investments. And I think, to me, that's where the key is going to come. So I can see the SIPP market, active investment, individual investment, do-it-yourself investment to some extent, really going forwards as people look to realise they've got a pension pot here they might spend, or it might be need to sustain them for the next 30 or 40 years to draw an income from it. But let's go back a little bit. Let's go back 20 years. I say it was a tale of two chancellors. Pensions had been a little bit dull to some extent. You know, you sort of went to an insurance company, you bought a pension, and that was pretty much it. 1989, then Chancellor Nigel Lawson sort of revolutionised the market by saying, I'd like to make it easier for people to manage personal pension schemes, to manage their own investments. So we had the development of self-invested personal pensions. And the ability for you guys to pick equities, bonds, gilts, commercial property, any sort of recognised listed investment, put together your own portfolio and manage it appropriately. Plus the fact that obviously, and still to this day, you get higher rate tax relief, you get tax relief at your marginal rate based on the contributions you make and subject to necessary rules. So you get tax relief on the money going in. The money grows pretty much tax advantaged, and you're able to take 25% out still as a tax-free lump sum. So from an investment perspective, allying that with some sort of active management capacity, portfolio management, you actually achieve quite a bit. It's one of the wrappers, and I look at things as tax wrappers to some extent. It's one of the tax wrappers where there are still some tax relief advantages. Watch this space. Obviously, we've got an election coming up. There could be some changes on that. Lib Dems last week said they would look at removing higher rate tax relief down to a flat rate of tax relief, but that was the Lib Dems. I don't think we need to worry too much about them at the moment, but let's be careful what I say there. But things are going to change. There are still tax relief advantages to take out pensions, and you can ally that with some investment management as well. What you used to buy everything in one black box. You used to go along to an insurance company, buy a pension, you've got the administration of the insurance company, you've got the funds offered by the insurance company, and basically, if you were lucky, you got a good one. If you're lucky, you've got a couple of good funds, but generally, if you've got an average, you're talking to generalists, really, rather than specialists. After Nigel Lawson's announcement, we moved out into SIPs, and really what we did was we broke the black box up, and we broke the functions up, and we gave the functions out to the specialists rather than generalists. So no longer do you just have to rely on the list of funds that's provided by that pension provider. You can pick and choose how you want to do it. You can use funds, you can put together a portfolio of UK equities, overseas equities, the whole raft of different investments, I think, but geared towards the accumulation stage of getting a fund together for you in your pension arrangement. And since then, SIPs, I guess, have been one of the few successes of the pensions market. So far untarnished by many of the bad headlines that some of the payout / the Daily Express seems to have focused upon. The key components, I think, and you can divide a pension up into the advice on what to do, and sometimes that's the complicated bit because of the myriad of complex legislation that sits around SIPs, the actual administration of the pension bit, but then more importantly, let's take the investment bit away from some of these big monolithic insurance companies, and let's let stockbrokers, let's let fund managers, let's let individuals put together their own portfolios and manage it in accordance with their own requirements. That's where we've got to, I think. And over the years, we've seen the development of the SIP market from the big companies offering a range of funds and calling it SIPs, to the do-it-yourself companies offering you the chance to just open an account, do your research, pick your specific investments, and put together your own portfolio. And there's lots of theories, I think, on the way people manage their portfolios. We had a list of permitted investments, and apologies for the wordy slide, but it pretty much covered all sorts of the normal investments, and most of the inquiries we get over the years have been, can we put these sorts of investment into our self-invested personal pension? So normal stocks and shares and open-ended investment companies, collective investment schemes, OICs, etc., etc. So you've got pretty much the widest range of regulated investments. The key bit there, I guess, being regulated. Generally, the Treasury remained on the side of safety, and most of the permitted investment for SIPs were chosen because they had a regulatory and a customer protection sort of shell around them. Back in 2006, we went through an issue which was termed pension simplification, which never actually really happened. But at the time, the then Chancellor, Nigel Lawson, was proposing that you were going to be able to put anything you wanted into your personal pension. So you could, there was talk about being able to put wine stocks or just bottles of wine into your personal pension, or residential property. Wine I remember very much because there was one financial advisor I was dealing with in the Midlands, and he had a client who specialised in a wine buying service. And they wanted to put this wine buying service as a dealing service through a personal pension. But in order to convince us, I had to go up there and test out his wine buying service. And I had a very nice lunch. I don't remember actually coming back, to tell you the truth. But it was all done in the sake of research and in the sake of looking towards investing in wine under a personal pension. I guess the good bit was that in the end, the whole sort of residential property, esoteric investment thing didn't actually happen. And I'm probably just as well. I mean, at the same time, Gordon Brown suggested developing an annuity that ran off the mortgage books of big banks. So it's quite pleasing in some ways that with what happened with the crash just afterwards, that perhaps we didn't get into some of these esoteric investments. You can still find them. These days they're packaged up a little bit more perhaps as unregulated collective investment schemes, more for sophisticated investors. We got a bit of a U-turn on property and pensions, but I think what it did do was it gave the idea again that there are more investment classes than just the typical ones offered by insurance companies. People sometimes wanted a bit more breadth in what they did with their pension, and they wanted a bit more control over areas they'd researched themselves. I think shows like this today give people the chance to research themselves some of the areas they're interested in, and then take that knowledge and expertise into their particular pension plan. But if you go into the website, I Googled the other day, SIP approvable, to look at some of the investments people say you can buy under SIPs. And this is my warning a little bit. I found you could buy a nice little apartment in Grenada if you wanted. You could buy Ukrainian farmland still, if you wanted, into your self-invested personal pension. Perhaps not the best investment at the moment. Chinese bamboo forests. You could buy China. So I do wonder whether some of these investments are sold rather. How many of you guys wake up in the morning saying, I've got a great plan, I've got a collection of stocks across the world, all balanced up. What I really need, just to top off my pension, is a bit of bamboo forest. It tends not to happen. And store pods. Great, 75-year leases on store pods. Perfect for someone obviously just going into retirement, because you can't really break the lease. But we've got to be careful. I think the key to self-invested personal pensions is generally the investments are recognised investments, and those with some consumer protection. And the danger, obviously, with the SIP market is taking a lot of focus at the moment. There are complaints, mainly, I guess, with regard to the contents. But generally, I see the SIP market and the new retirement freedoms as being very positive for individual investors taking their own pension forwards. Current pension policy? Well, no, that's not current pension policy, but I did put it up just as another Daily Express headline. Who knows? Some people think it is current pension policy. Or is that current pension policy? I'm not totally sure. Pensions is a complicated area, and people do sometimes think that it's run by monolithic companies to their disadvantage. I think that's changing. I think more people are becoming aware of pensions and the need. If you want to be in control of your own retirement destiny, you need a pension to some extent. So you still get tax relief on contributions. Watch this space on that. You still get tax-efficient growth. You still get a tax-free lump sum. There's a lifetime allowance as to the maximum pension fund you can have, and there's an annual allowance as to the maximum amount of tax relief you can get every year. There are different types of protection. The big question is tinkering. It changes almost every year, and I think you do need to keep abreast of the rules. So you're keeping abreast not just of the investments, but of the legislative structure that creates the wrapper that is your pension. How much will you need? Well, that's changed a bit now. I mean, the examples I'm going to use were just based around when you bought an annuity. So if you went out in the streets today and said, could you live on the minimum wage? Most people would say, well, what do you think of the minimum wage? People would say, well, I'm glad we got one, but I'm not sure I could live on it. If you wanted a pension of the minimum wage, which annualises out at about £12,000, you need a pension fund of £252,000. And it starts giving you the indication of how much you need to have in a pension pot to produce an income that will sustain you for 25 or 30 years. And that was with the protection of buying an annuity. If you don't buy an annuity and you manage your pension pot, you will still need a significant amount in your pension to justify living for, well, to pay you for living for the next 25, 30, etc., with longevity increasing. Adequacy, how much do you need? The day you stop working, how much you're going to be paid by somebody else. I think that's the way I look at pensions. The day you stop working, your employer will stop paying you your salary. What other income will you start bringing in? And what adequacy? That was to try and replicate the replacement rate for replicate standards of living in working life. So you need, a significant, perhaps 2/3 or so of the income that you had prior to retirement, and you need a pension fund accordingly. So when you start seeing pension fund figures, they tend to look very high because basically you're saying, I can stop working, I've got 30 years to live, how much money am I going to leave to sustain 30 years? But then you put that against a backdrop of 1 in 11 Britons has less than £10 a month disposable income. 1 in 5 UK savers has less than £500 in the bank. So you start seeing that there is a pension crisis and there is a reason for trying to encourage people to save into pensions. And I think SIPs have done well by giving people the freedom of how they invest. And I think the Chancellor, George Osborne's sort of figures about giving people access to money will, in the long term, perhaps enhance that. So pension simplification, do people take pensions? Well, a lot of people say to me, Mike, we don't need pensions, we'll just go with ISAs. For me, a combination of the two is the key, I think. ISAs, okay, taxed out of income, but you get income tax-free out of it. Pensions, you get tax relief. So for me, it's not either or, it's a combination of the two, acting together, and within new rules, you can tweak the new rules and tax plan and minimise the amount of tax you pay at the far end. So for me, there's the two things. There's the wrapper, there's the investment management, and then there's taking it out in the most efficient way. We had pension simplification in 2006. I feared for my job it was going to be so simple. Here I am, 8 years later, and it's far more complicated. So complexity at least helps some people, such as my good self, and helps me build my pension. But then we got George Osborne sort of letting me clear, no one will have to buy an annuity. So going forwards, we were entering a little bit into the unknown here. In Australia, they gave people the right not to have to buy an annuity, to be able to take out their pension money and spend it. And guess what people did? Took out their pension money and spent it. 1 in 3 Australians is now living on state benefits. So I think we need to just be careful about how flexible this is. I was with a guy the other day, and he said to me, my brother, he's 55 next year, so he can start taking out his pension money. He's got a decent amount of pension money. His first thought to me was he's going to take £25,000 out to have his teeth done. He said he could have done this years ago, but suddenly he's got his pension fund. It was £25,000 to £30,000 to have his teeth done. It just seems that perhaps some of these flexibilities may be used in the wrong way. But I suppose if it comes to the crunch, thank you. But we can see, annuity rates were falling. This is why annuities had to change. Annuity rates were. Do you remember back in 1990? I think it was. We had 16% annuity rates. Annuities were good in those days. I remember being in the House of Commons, an MP came up to me and said, I don't worry about all this pension stuff, Mike, I've got guaranteed annuity rates. I said, what's your guaranteed annuity rate? Guaranteed annuity rate of 15% on my policy. I said, go on, who's it with? He said, the Equitable Life. Maximum income from income drawdown was falling. So I think, a combination of all this squeeze, quantitative easing, low interest rates, was squeezing the amount people could take out of pensions. And I think, partially logically, George Osborne's sort of approach to allowing people the flexibility to take their money out is addressing all this. How long to get a return on annuities? People regard annuities in the wrong way. An annuity probably should form part of an investment portfolio. It's an insurance policy. It's not an investment policy. It's insurance against living too long. So a combination of an equity portfolio and an annuity in the future may well be the way people manage their retirement. We don't buy insurance against living against the age of 95. Annuities are insurance. So don't rule them out of hand. Rule them out as a tool, perhaps a fixed interest investment as part of an equity portfolio. Millions to be denied in new pension freedoms. Okay, everyone's been told, and the feeling. I've had people come up to me and say, "Mike, this is great, isn't it? I'm going to buy a new conservatory. Actually, I've actually got them around, and I'm going to take my money out next April straight away just to pay the bill." You point out, then they might not be able to do it. There will be some rules, so it's not going to be freedom for everybody. Steve Webb came out very clearly and said, "I don't mind if people spend all their money on a Lamborghini and live on a state benefit. It's up to them. It's their choice." And hence, Lamborghini has become one of the most Googled words over the last 6 months or so. It could have said Rolls-Royce. It's easier to spell. But, there are issues. This was one. Keith died 20 months ago. He bought an annuity. Now I get nothing. Planning with annuities was quite clever. In the future, we'll get Keith died 20 months after spending 280 on a Lamborghini. I do have visions of lots of octogenarian spouses driving around the country in their Lamborghinis. That's what they've taken out as their, rather than a dependence annuity. But all I'm trying to say is there's going to be complexities. There'll be freedom, but you can't have the freedom unless you've managed the portfolio in the right way to achieve the right freedoms. Retirement options going forward. For me, retirement options, whatever you call them, it's about trying as an individual to mirror, take a picture of what you think your retirement's going to be about. What's your income stream going to be? What's the income below which you can't live? Do you need to leave a bequest? Make sure you have a picture of what you want to try and achieve in retirement. Look at your risk profile, look at the investment returns you can achieve from your portfolio, add on a bit of longevity risk. How long do you think you're going to live to? People generally understate that. And that's what will give you a properly managed, self-invested personal pension that hopefully will meet your retirement needs. Trying to find that true risk profile between willingness, ability and need. And I think the focus, we'll see a lot more developments on advisor websites, on direct-to-the-public websites, with regard to giving you the tools to do your own retirement planning based around your portfolio. Looking at glide paths, should you be in equities at the age of 70? Should you be in equities at the age of 75? Should you be glide pathing out of equities? And how should you be doing that? A lot of investment theories will come across. Modern retirement theory in America gives us lots of ideas about how people should manage their portfolios for retirement, allocating specific classes of investment for specific types of need. All this is quite new for the UK and perhaps will develop, but I guarantee you'll see a lot more about this in the press, on the websites of varying companies as we move towards a much more do-it-yourself approach to retirement and investment management. Will your pension pot last as long as you will is the key question. Managing that. You can manage investment risk, you can do what you want with investment risk, but how do you cover longevity risk? For me, that's the one question that annuity really helps. But most Brits are still relying on the state to fund retirement. 3 million people are relying on the lottery to fund their retirement. But you've got to be in it to win it, haven't you? So I like the idea of the lottery to fund your retirement. But perhaps we ought to change our marketing as pension companies. And I thought this heading was what I picked out. Pension saving stimulates the love hormone. Now, if as pension companies we all went out with our marketing plans around stimulating the love hormone, perhaps people might save more into their pensions. Who knows? Thank you very much.